Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and I'm back with another League build review video of all my builds for Trial of the Ancestors League, which ended up having something like 20 builds, so it's going to be a long one. And I'll start out by kind of talking about the mechanic to begin with. Bit of a spicy take. Mechanic didn't really matter to me, but I think it was the best league we've ever had. And that's just because the game is in such a good state. Sanctum was back. I loved Sanctum. A lot of viable builds, a lot of cool shit in the game at the time. And as well as that, the actual tattoos, the reward structure from Trial of the Ancestors, I thought added a whole lot to the game. And I actually really liked tattoos as a whole. I barely engaged with League Mechanic in the end, but thank God lots of other people did, because it was worth doing. And then I could buy whatever tattoos I needed, and it was a big enhancement to builds and gameplay and all that. So probably ended up being like the most fun league we've ever had, at least for me. So that's kind of the review of that. And then I also played a lot of wacky builds. So we had lots of crazy builds, and some of them were kind of on the higher end of budget because the budget made more sense this time around, being higher, since there was a lot more money flowing around through high-end drops and also through Sanctum. So it was a more justifiable, to spend more money. So a lot of fun builds. I think it yielded a few of the best builds I've ever played. And with that, let's get into reviewing our first build, which was what I started with, EK Trickster. So the first build I did was Ethereal Knives, and as a Trickster, the idea there was that I played an Ethereal Knives build the league before, and it was really powerful with Blade Blast, but it was also with the Nimmy's interaction. This time around, they gave us a return proj support, so you could do it on a much cheaper system, much cheaper budget, and still have the interaction of Ethereal Knives plus Blade Blast. So you throw out your knives, you get return proj with your lingering blades at your feet, and then you could detonate all of them with your Blade Blast, really like compact at a boss, and actually have an enhanced amount of single target. That said, Ethereal Knives itself basically is the star of the show. It does enough damage, it's good enough by itself, and it was a decent starter for the league, but it does need much more gear, much more scaling to go all the way into endgame and have proper damage. It was a decent start. It was a Trickster this time around instead of an Inquisitor like I did the first time when I did a large build with Nimmies. And you can see this is what it kind of looked like off of a pretty low budget and just doing my quest, Searing Exarch, I believe it was. So nothing crazy, just I think a few million DPS in the end, but it was a stable enough build with good sustain, survivability, damage, that it was an enjoyable league start. And this time around, you can't really do the same thing anymore because I'm pretty sure there's no Ethereal Knives with lingering blades anymore. So you just won't be able to do this type of Ethereal Knives that incorporates a Blade Blast as well as a Ethereal Knives in the build. So when we jump over to the flawless rating system that cannot be flawed by anyone, streamers inclusive, what we've got is effectiveness of probably about a 6. Like, it could clear well enough. It didn't boss terribly well, but it was a decent enough starter compared to a lot of the stuff. I don't know, it's going to be definitely kind of mediocre. The enjoyment, the return proj did not function quite as well as the Nimmies did in the end, because it actually landed the blades behind you, and then the overlap for the Blade Blast wasn't quite as good. So that did ruin the enjoyment a bit because it was a bit scuffed. But Ethereal Knife's pretty fun. The start was pretty fun. It was okay, ultimately. I'd give it maybe like a 7. And then its budget, it was highly budget, but it benefited from much more investment at the end of the day. The version I did in the end was pretty damn budget. I'd probably give it a 7 as well, which gives it maybe like... when the fuck did I add this? Can it be a starter? Oh, I don't know. Yes. I'm pretty sure we're not rating that for anything, but we're talking just 14 plus that equals 20. So not a bad score. The next build I fired up was potentially a bit too premature for a second build, and that is Energy Blade, Spell Totem, Arc, Inquisitor. So it's probably a bit premature, but it still worked out well enough as a second character. And the whole premise of doing this one was that Spellblade combined with Battle Mage was going to stack together, and thus Energy Blade was going to give some very big results with that. I hadn't played Arc Totems in a while, or even a Totem character in a while, so I wanted to do specifically a Totem character, try out a few Totems, but then hopefully land on Arc Totems, and it did work out pretty damn well. The character itself wasn't super thick for like defensiveness, but for a Totem playstyle it was enough, and Arc was very satisfying, having 5 or 6 Totems, I think it was 5 in the end. Just zapping things down was pretty damn good. It didn't end up hitting like the high ceiling I was hoping of, similar to Shockwave or maybe even above Shockwave. It was in the end just a bit below it. Cleared maybe a bit better, but single target wasn't quite as impressive. And it was more of a budget Energy Blade because, like I said, it's a second character. Ideally, you would be doing more of like an Ivory Tower thing, which is something I tackled later in the league. So for this one, it was just like Ghost Wrath and a much cheaper Energy Blade setup, but still an effective one to give lots of Energy Blade damage that you then turn into spell damage. And the real strength of this type of a setup is that you can do pretty much any spell. Like you can have a Totem plus any spell, stack lots of lightning, and then it'll work well as an Inquisitor. So to give this one a few ratings and stuff, effectiveness overall, it cleared pretty good. It's single targeted, not too bad. Probably something like an 8. The enjoyment, it was a bit of a scuffed Totem character. I don't love Totem playstyle these days, but did enjoy putting it together, maybe a 7. And its budget, it's relatively budget. It wasn't too hard to do, and it's probably starter viable. It's just going to take you a bit of work to get through to it. So in the end, a total of 22 is not too bad, I think. Next build I tackled was the reworked Chieftain, which had quite a large rework in the Ascendancy, and a lot of people weren't too pleased with it, but I wanted to tackle it anyway because I liked what I saw, especially the max resist scaling, and at the same time, I wanted to tackle a whole bunch of tattoo stacking for the first time, because tattoos certainly looked interesting, and there had to be a lot of potential with a lot of those tattoos. By like week 2 or 3, we could definitely afford to like actually stack and buy some tattoos, and this was a Facebreaker Earthquake Chieftain, so I wanted to stack some flat fizz tattoos and just kind of ease the pressure that Facebreakers would otherwise have from a lot of gear trying to get a lot of flat fizz elsewhere. And it was to a decent amount of success. It was a pretty strong character. It didn't have the biggest single target or like pure damage, but it cleared pretty damn well. It cleared pretty damn well. It could take a lot of hits because I built it pretty damn thick and then went 90 to all max res thanks to the new Chieftain shit. But then it faltered a bit when it came to like Ubers. When it came to Ubers, it did not do very well, and it wasn't ever going to. But it did leave me with a bit of a bad taste in my mouth because I was hoping to be like super thick against Uber content, and then it still kind of wasn't, just because max resists are not that good for that. You're better off with, like suppress and billions of damage. But up to that point, it was a pretty successful example of Earthquake and of Facebreakers and of the new Chieftain, and I had a lot of fun doing it. The only issue being falters in endgame, and you can't really replicate it these days with a lack of tattoos. It was a tattoo-heavy build, so I don't know where that leaves us, and at the end of the day, you're probably better off just making a fuck ton of other builds. Is what it is, I guess. But it was decent for a third character and a new attempt at the new Ascendancy. So to give it some ratings, I suppose we've got effectiveness. I think that's kind of a tough one because the overall character wasn't too bad. Just if we picture the defenses and the attempt at it all, I don't know, probably give it something like a 6. The enjoyment, I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it was satisfying having Earthquake and slamming and shield charging around and stuff. But compared to some of the other stuff, it's probably still only a 6. The budget, it can't really be very budget. First of all, you definitely need Facebreakers, so that's more about a starter issue, but then stacking all the right stuff with the limited gear slots takes a bit of work, and then tattoos, we're calling like an infinite budget at this point, right? So let's say something like a 4, not a high rating there. Can it be a starter? We're calling that a no as well. Giving us a total of 16. The next build to follow was yet another melee build, but this time around quite a speedier concoction, and it was using one of the new weapons that was created for this league, the Rakiata's sword. I wanted to play with it quite badly just because it looks really cool, as you can see, really cool big sword, but it's also got the inverted resist line on it, which is pretty crazy. So we weren't too sure how good it would be, but by the end of the character, it was pretty well established that Rakiatas should just make almost any melee skill or any sword-based skill pretty damn viable, pretty damn strong, and easy to build around. It means you don't have to really care about enemy resistances whatsoever, and you can just kind of choose how you want to scale throughout all the kind of different ascendancies. I chose Trickster on this one, so we're going to stack a lot of frenzies, and I wanted to play Melee Frenzy. Melee Frenzy is something I've done once or twice before, and it's pretty damn strong. It's a bit underplayed, I'd say, a bit, I don't know, sleeper, I wouldn't say sleeper OP, it's just a bit underutilized, I'd say. Not too many people play it, but then when they do, they're like, oh shit, that's pretty damn fun. So you stack lots of frenzies, stack lots of attack speed, get a lot of damage, and in this case we have lots of cold and lightning, so we're shocking pretty well, we're freezing pretty well, and then as a Trickster we have some decent amount of speed and defensiveness as well. And in the end, this was a really powerful character for a melee build, one that did not take too much gear to get going. And you could quite easily substitute many other skills in its place as well. But Frenzy itself, I'm a pretty big fan of. And this coming league, it's going to get even more powerful with the quality making it much better. I think it was the quality. Either way, it's getting some good damage and attack speed bonus. And then on top of that, we might get some transfigured gems for Frenzy as well. I'm not sure we do or don't, but so far we haven't seen any. I'm just hoping there might be some. But it was a build that I think ran through Sanctum pretty damn well, which for a melee character, of course, you know, a bit surprising. And I think it rolled through most endgame content. Like I did the Feared, pretty sure I did most Uber bosses. Maybe not all of the Uber bosses, but most of them. And went pretty deep in Simulacrum as well. But it definitely took on at least some of the Uber bosses. And for a Melee Frenzy, a bit of a surprise package, bit of a hipster build. But Rakiata's itself, like I said, was fairly well established by that point as just a very strong item. It is coming back this league as part of the core drop pool, but we don't exactly know what the drop rate's going to be like. So it might be something you won't really get to use until much later on into the league. That's going to be anyone's guess for now. So if we then look at our ratings for it, effectiveness, I'd give it something like a 9. For a melee build, it was about as good as it could be. I think it had like 10 to 20 mil in DPS without spending, you know, exorbitant amounts of money. It was very effective, it cleared well, and it certainly performed well on single target. The enjoyment, I had a lot of fun with this. Wouldn't be peak enjoyment, I'd say, but basically, melee, you know, this is my second melee character by this point, and I will just take a quick second to say melee is actually a lot of fun. Everyone's like hating on melee a lot, saying, oh, it's not as good as Tornado Shot or some shit. Doesn't fucking matter. Some of these melee builds are very frustrating in endgame, very frustrating in Uber bossing, but up to that point, some of these melee builds can be some of the funnest things you play out there, and they are still very strong. Just don't really focus too much on Ubers, or get billions of damage and then you'd be fine. So the enjoyment on that one was very high. And then the budget, it really was not that expensive of a character. But the Rakiata is going to be an X factor these days, so I don't know what to say about that. I'd say at this point it can be relatively budget. Can it be a starter? We might be able to start a Melee Frenzy. But without knowing anything about the Rakiatas, I'm going to leave that as kind of like a who the fuck knows. So still a pretty high score in the end. We got ourselves an 18 and a 25, and I'm pretty pleased with that. The next build I did was already a second attempt at a Chieftain this early on, and that's because Chieftain's still pretty new. There is still a lot to do with the resist scaling stuff, but we've been told that the 5% chance to explode 500% extra enemy life damage thing was a really good node, and we had to test it out pretty much ASAP. So that's basically the entire concept of the character, going for any sort of Ignite build, but I wanted to do Divine Ire Ignite this time around, and then scale Ignite, because the Explode node can work without Ignite, but it works really potently if you stack a lot of generic Ignite, have the Explode give capability of igniting as well, and then when you're actually exploding that 500% extra life 5% of the time, that's usually going to be at least once or twice a pack, then that 5% 500 explode will wipe out fucking cities. It was pretty crazy for Expedition. It was crazy for large scale clear on all kinds of endgame maps, and then it was pretty nutty for Simulacrum as well. I don't remember if it went all the way through to 30 waves of Simulacrum, but it was definitely very crazy because we were using Simulacrum mobs and Val Breach to basically take care of all kinds of single target and endgame bosses with just one quick little explode. So the Divine Ire's actual ignite damage in this build was actually kind of shit. It was something like 1 to 2 million ignite damage, but when you'd explode an enemy and then ignite off of their basic corpse and 500%, it would... I'm not sure what ignite kind of damage it would be, but it looked like something like 10 to 20 mil in ignite DPS against plenty of different high-end enemies. So with Val Breach, you could utilize that for big endgame explodes. Otherwise, Simulacrum, pull mobs next to the endgame boss, and you could get some very potent explode there as well, with a good little example here. So basically, I think I wiped out 30 waves of Simulacrum by just getting the Ignite Prolif from the Explode on the large bosses. If you couldn't get the Explode on the large bosses, then it was a bit of a struggle. But for the most part, you could almost always do that, or wait for a good Val Breach to happen as well. So it was a very fun character. The Explode node was the first time we tried it, and it was crazy good and quite underrated. Since most people just laughed at the fact it was 5%. Most people wrote it off immediately, but once we tried it out and played around with it in-game, we saw that it was very large AoE and procced reliably enough with Ignite to kill all kinds of dumb enemies out there in the game. So, pretty damn fun build and very effective for AoE clear, and sometimes single target if you get the right thing happening. Effectiveness, I'm going to call that like a 9. So for single target, obviously it wasn't purely that good, but for clear it was amazing and overall very strong. The enjoyment, I'm going to give that one a 10. We had a lot of fucking fun playing and watching this one. The budget wasn't super expensive, I don't think, but I will double check that just to make sure. It did invest in tattoos in a similar way as the previous one. So for the 90 res, it is kind of tough to maintain that and you know, do that again. I did also utilize a Elegant Hubris for a bit of extra damage, but it was mostly for the tattoo ignore attributes thing. So you could build this in a different way and not focus on tattoos. And other than that, it wasn't super expensive, I don't think. So it was definitely a doable build. And I'm going to call it something like a 7. Can it be a starter? I'm thinking it probably could be, but I'm thinking you probably shouldn't. Like, a Spellcaster Chieftain is a bit tough to start with, and it will take a while to ramp. So it's a bit more of a second character. Can it be? I'm thinking, I'm not too sure. I don't want to bait anyone. Let's just say no, but with a caveat that it's probably possible, and if you know what you're doing, you might be able to get there. So we are talking a score of 26. So next up we had yet another melee build, and as I said, I do enjoy me some melee at the moment, and I went pretty damn hipster with this one. I wanted to make a good use of the trauma support that just came out, which essentially makes almost any melee skill into kind of a bone shatter, but I wanted to go extra hipster with it, so I went dual strike and then Varunastras. So for conventionally like using swords, you wouldn't be able to do trauma because it's like a mace thing, but since you're using Varunastra, we can justify the use of trauma and then having dual strike, to stack that trauma. We're using a Slayer to have leech and some of that leech defensive mitigation so that we can actually stack some traumas. But in the end, it wasn't a huge trauma stacking build. Like, you know, some bone shatters and traumas go into many, like tens of stacks. I went up to about 20 stacks, and the difference between 0 and 20 stacks is still something like 2 to 3 times damage. So by the time you actually stack up, it's a big, significant amount of extra damage, but I wouldn't say trauma was like the focal point of the build. It was just kind of an enhancement. Basically, just get lots of strike range, get some area. We're playing a Slayer, run Varunastra so you can get extra cluster jewels, and scale really well through that. And then a dual strike ends up screen clearing and one-tapping noobs all over the place. It ended up being a pretty decent zappy build for like good, fast clear. It also ended up doing some pretty good tanking, so I was actually fairly thick, even though it's only got like 4k life. It was good enough to be able to take most hits, since we were a pretty thick character with determination and flask setups, damage reduction, Arctic armor, all kinds of stuff. It did go the yards and also took on all Ubers, which is actually a pretty big feat for most builds, especially melee builds. Typically a really good melee build to take on all Ubers just needs a huge surplus of damage. This one had decent damage, but it also had decent playstyle and survivability, and that's why it was capable of doing all Ubers. And it was actually one of my better Sanctum farmers for the league too. So since we're so zappy and can like one-shot things, it did pretty damn well for Sanctum as well as the rest of the game. So then if we hop over and give it some ratings, I'd say it was pretty damn effective for effectiveness. Like, you know, you could justify giving it a 10 because it managed to clear all content and it was smooth in most content it did. But, you know, there's better clears, there's better single targets, so it's probably more something like an 8 overall. And then the enjoyment, I had a lot of fun putting this one together, I had a lot of fun playing it. Like I said, I do enjoy playing some melee once you've got the right attack speed, damage, all that sort of shit. It feels pretty fucking good to play. So it was highly enjoyable putting together and to play. And then the budget, you could technically like start this out. Already typed a yes here. But you probably wouldn't have the best time with dual strike because, let's be real, it does end up basically being kind of a scuffed bone shatter. So it's a bone shatter that you got to put like more work into making work. But then you're not really doing pure trauma, you're doing other stuff. Ultimately, the budget isn't anything too great, but it's certainly doable. Getting Varunastras early on is going to be a bit tough, but you don't have to go Varunastra. All kinds of stuff plays into it, but this type of a build will benefit more from having better gear. So we'll probably have to give that something like a 5. So if we factor all that in, it's probably your good old-fashioned trustworthy 22. And then next up after that is a build that was a bit of a surprise package, and it's the one I was basically telling people was my favorite build of the league. Even though it might not be the most potent or the most effective, it was pretty fucking close to being one of the best builds of the league. But it was definitely one of the most fun and one of the biggest surprise packages, and that is Oppenheimer Arrow, or what I decided to call Oppenheimer Arrow. That is Vaal Burning Arrow. So I've done Burning Arrow a few times in the past few years, and I've always wanted it to be a good thing, and I've always gone from this Ignite perspective. But this time around I thought, what if Burning Arrow could be done hit base, and what if we focused more on Vaal Burning Arrow? Because Vaal Burning Arrow charges up so quick and it's got several charges, it's fully viable to be like used quite often in a build. So I went with some projectile scaling, I grabbed myself a Voltaxic, I went lots of lightning damage that all went into full chaos, and then we just started doing some Oppenheimer action with the Vaal Burning Arrows. I also used Void Fletcher, which ended up being kind of irrelevant, as you can see throughout the gameplay. The Void Fletcher explosions are basically meaningless almost all of the time, but they can help in clear a little bit. At the end of the day, it's kind of meaningless. You don't really, like, I wanted the Void Fletcher to be a part of the whole situation, but it's pretty much Vile Burning Arrow. That's what's doing the hard carry. And yeah, we got it to a point where it was definitely blowing shit up and doing quite a lot of single target damage. So you did some pretty normal Burning Arrow every now and again. Once you had your Vile Burning Arrows up, then you could, like, one-shot bosses. I think by the end of it, I'd need my other video, I think. By the end of it, I was almost phasing Maven through just a single phase. So if we're going to something like here, that's our feared attempt, I believe. And I think, yeah, that would have been the feared. We start from the start of that one, just to have a quick look at what happened. So you start out with no arrows, of course, but then it quickly charges up. And I've also got some totem action for explosive arrow. As you can see, it does some good damage there, does some good damage. We've got a couple of Vile Burning Arrows. Surely we deliver a payload at some point soon. Still stacking, waiting for the next. Elder's up, and Elder's gone. That was 2 Vile Burning Arrows. So one of the other things I wanted to kind of do is maybe try Hateforge with this sort of shit at some point, so that you're just actually firing off pure Vile Burning Arrows. But I didn't do that, and I kept this on a bit more of a budget. I don't think I even tattoo scaled, which would have been much bigger, and it's something I allowed myself in the future of this league to do. I ended up tattoo scaling as well, but this time around I was just purely trying to keep it somewhat realistic, because I didn't want it to be too crazy and more of an accessible Vile Burning Arrow or Oppenheimer Arrow style thing. So Vile Burning Arrow hit base, something to keep on your radar for the future. It's very powerful, it's a lot of fun, and this time I did it with Voltaxic, but maybe you could do it with all kinds of other stuff. Effectiveness, I'm giving it a 10. It cleared real well. It blew shit up real well. I'm pretty sure it took on all Ubers. The enjoyment, absolutely loved it. It was very fun. Novelty out the arse for this sort of thing. And yeah, got it to like 95, 96 comfortably. And then the budget, it's not too crazy, I don't think. Just a Voltaxic, 2 little other cool pieces of gear. I'd say it can be pretty budget. I'd say it can also be kind of a starter. But to really feel good about like the big one taps, you're going to want a bit more gear, probably more of a second character, but it certainly can be kind of a starter. And I think Burning Arrow itself, in the Ignite sense, should be pretty decent this league, especially with some of those transfigured version style scalings. But I think that's a fair and justifiable 28. After that, we went into kind of meme build territory, and that is Voltaxic Burst. It's a skill I've wanted to really push to its limits and make work for quite a while, and as you can see, it's a bit of a jank setup. You got to focus on duration, not duration. It's chaos, it's lightning. There's a lot that goes into it, and then it also becomes quite screen cancery once you're actually just clearing with it. It ended up being pretty fun, pretty effective, but had some of its own problems, like, you know, all of that stuff to solve means you might do less on defense, less on pure offense. It's a bit different, it's a bit weird, but it was viable, and these pops that end up happening, which are like corpse explosion style pops, were pretty cool, pretty effective. Like, I didn't mind looking at this, but I know that a lot of people absolutely hated what was going on my screen and struggled to watch this while I was playing it. But it was a lot of fun seeing these explosions, and they were pretty satisfying when you're piloting this, because you don't necessarily care as much about the explosions, or you can be looking away, reading your chat, etc. It's still a lot of fun. It was a tough thing to put together because Voltaxic Burst is one hell of a jank skill, but we got it to a point where it was doing some pretty good single target, and its clear was definitely very effective. So you can see what was going on with that sort of clear, and it became a pretty snappy, fast character. It was an occultist where I think I did void batteries for it, scaled lots of areas, scaled lots of cast speed, and you can see what's going on when we have like some shrines, and it became quite a beast of a build. And this is what happened when you got Accelerate and Echo Shrine, and it's to go even further beyond, and it gets pretty wild. So, like I said, bit of a seizure sort of a situation, but that's just par for the course these days with Path of Exile. Half the builds out there are going to give you some kind of a seizure. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a lot of fun to play and put together, but then, you know, it has its problems. It was decent enough for Sanctum, surprisingly, because you build up a few charges, run in, kill things immediately, because it could do some pretty big damage at the end of the day. But I would hardly expect people to be playing this, copying it, and enjoying it the way I did. So that's a kind of a big drawback. Effectiveness, I'd call it something like an 8. Once again, could kill bosses, did some pretty damn good clear, had its problems though. Enjoyment was a 9, I'd say. You know, the actual delay sometimes is pretty damn annoying, and having to build into that was kind of annoying as well. But then the budget, I think I made it pretty expensive, and I think it was tough to copy, and I think it's tough to copy just playstyle-wise as well. Can it be a starter? Wouldn't really recommend it. It probably could be, because I do remember I've done Voltaxic Burst on a hardcore run even once before, up to maps, and you know, it's okay, but you certainly wouldn't want to do it, and I wouldn't recommend it. So with all that said, I think it's a nice little 20. After that one, I moved into yet another screen cluster of a build, but for a different reason. It wasn't a painful screen cluster, it's just a lot of shit happening all over the place, and it is splitting steel. It's kind of hard to tell what the fuck's happening most of the time when you're actually using this skill, because when you're using Nimmies or Return Proj with it, it gets pretty crazy. But both Nimmies and Return Proj serve to actually make splitting steel quite a bit more powerful than it otherwise would be. And I think this time around I went with a Return Proj and kept it a bit more budget because of that, and it still proved to be very effective. This is a Uber Eater of Worlds, and I went from a champion impale perspective, and I built it pretty damn thick. As you could see, given that I was perseverance scaling, I was using armor and evasion, I had fortify, had good life gain on hit. I could, even with only 3k life, end up basically face tanking everything the game had to offer, including those Ubers, and it's just well established that a champion like this is going to be a pretty clean, solid build. But splitting steel was potentially particularly strong in these setups because it had good viable AoE screen clear, but also had really good single target with Return Proj, since it's hard to really explain. You shoot out a lot of these splitting projectiles and then they all return converging on top of you, basically shotgunning way more than they otherwise are supposed to, and Nimmies makes it even bigger because it doesn't matter where you attack with your first proj, everything's going to coalesce back on top of you with the return and do that shotgunning damage. Without a penalty like the Return Proj support has. So in the end, splitting steel ends up being one of the nicest things you can start and level with, and also one of the most powerful attack-based builds that you can actually scale into the end game. I think I also had Savior in this one, so once again, even more screen clutter. And yeah, you can see there was basically no screen visibility or bitrate to be spoken of, but that didn't really matter because we're a champion, we're thick, and we don't need to see shit, not where we're going. This was the first character, I think, that was starting to go through simulacrums of wave 30 pretty comfortably. You can see we're doing Cortexes, all kinds of crazy damage mods and shit. Didn't really matter too much because you're basically never taking damage, and when you are, you can take some pretty big hits. Never mind about that. Can take some pretty big hits just with the extra damage reduction that we have from Fortify and other stuff. Suppress, I think, as well. So it took on all Ubers, took on like 30 waves of Simulacrum pretty clean, but it was very laggy, is what I remember. Like, you can tank a lot in Simulacrum, you can, you know, get through those harder waves, but it gets pretty frame droppy, pretty laggy, just because of the sheer volume of splitting Core Steel stuff that's happening. So it's pretty dumb. But splitting steel is definitely something for you guys to look at in the future. It looks like it's getting some different versions, but also keeping with its original theme, and should be very powerful in many very different setups. It doesn't have to be Savior. So effectiveness, I think it's a 10. It was great for clear, it was great for single target, great for everything in the game. Enjoyment, I'd give it something like a 9. Quite a lot of fun. Just having that solid of a character and pretty novelty, pretty different type of skill to be playing. Didn't really like pressing Cold Steel all the time, but maybe the new Splitting Steel won't force you to do that. Maybe it will. Who the fuck knows? With the Nimis, it becomes so much more powerful than the version I had as well. So my version was comfortably taking on all endgame, and if you just had a Nimis in the build, it would have been like twice as good, which is crazy to think about. And then the budget, I did put some money into it. It was pretty strong. It wasn't super cheap, but you can definitely do it on cheap. And then obviously it could have gone even higher. So with that, can it be a starter? I think it can. And what do we have? A 25, a worthy score indeed. After that, I gave the new Guardian a shot for the first time since its rework, and it was as a power Siphon base, but we're basically trially stacking thanks to the relics that the Guardian provides, and it was kind of a hybrid build, but mostly just energy shield based. It was a bit of a weird build to put together, but first time I was trying the new Guardian and seeing it all unfold, and it sold me on Guardian. Like, it absolutely showed me how powerful Guardian can be as a very versatile ascendancy. It doesn't have to be attack based, doesn't have to be spell based. It can be all kinds of shit. You can basically do whatever you want with Guardian and have very good results, because it's just got a very stable structure of scaling through the 3 relics that give you level 27 anger, wrath, or hatred. And hatred, actually. And as well as that, you got that little Super Saiyan minion of yours who helps you take a bunch of damage or starts you off with a bunch of damage throughout the campaign. And then you can become a very thick build through the other Guardian ascendancies. This was Power Siphon, so lots of good AoE, but then you could also swap into Barrage and do lots of good single target, which I imagine should still be doable next league. But overall, it was just a real strong character, given that it's a Wander, didn't cost super large amounts of money, and then had good single target as well as having good survivability. With Wanders, you feel like you usually have to choose between some things. You've either just got really good clear, or you've got really good single target, or you've got really good damage, but then you're squishy. There's typically lots of choices you're making between Wanders, because you can't have it all, whereas this time around, I think I had it all, and this was one of the strongest characters I'd played in recent memory, and up to that point, it was build of the league. But things did get a bit spicier a bit later on as well. So overall, Guardian, Wander, Power Siphon, just terrific. Guardian anything is all I could really say. You can pretty much do Guardian with anything and have some good success, because there's such a good template for scaling damage there, and then also defenses. This one, I think, was a bit more on the expensive side, given that it's wanding and I had to craft a bunch of gear, but there's a lot you can do with it to make it cheaper. And overall, just good stuff, like Guardian. I am happy to sing its praises. I was not a believer until I tried it out, so I was a bit late to the party, but overall, yeah, very good Ascendancy rework, and one of the more successful Ascendancy reworks in recent memory. So we got an effectiveness of 10, it cleared great, it tanked great, it ended up killing, I think, all the bosses pretty damn well. Enjoyment was pretty damn high as well. Had a lot of fun with Guardian. Had a lot of fun with Wanding and Power Siphon. Budget, I think I'll actually check exactly how expensive or not this one was. So if we have a look, I did have pretty good shield, a wand that was fractured that ended up being okay. It wasn't anything too crazy on the budget. It's basically just, 10 to 20 divines of solid crafted gear, and you have to make sure, that you are crafting the right things and getting the right pieces together. And 10 to 20 div in today's world is not that much when you're trying to get a big end game build. So Guardian, pretty much anything, and a good solid framework for its gear. As a second or third character, should be pretty reasonable. Like I said, very tanky build in the end, and also good DPS on it. So a budget of, let's call it something like 6. Nothing too budget, but do want to invest into it. Can it be a starter? I think you definitely could start Guardian anything, but of course, as a Wander, you get much better performance out of a second or third character. So user beware for that. So 26, it was at that point build of the league, so take all these ratings with a grain of salt, but pretty good stuff there. After that, I allowed myself a use of projectile stacking tattoos to make some kind of a meme build. So a new MTX came out for Creeping Frost that shoots like these creeping squids all over the ground, and I wanted to play around with it, but I wanted to make it a bit more of a dumb build, and then justify the use of more expensive, powerful things in the form of those projectile stacking tattoos. Those things were very expensive but very powerful, because with those you could get about 4 extra projectiles with, you know, a few extra passive points of investment, and in many cases of projectile stacking, that is good overlap and that is good extra power. So I think this was a Trickster or a Saboteur. It's a Saboteur, and I went with Cast While Channel Winter Orb into Creeping Frost. So I'm teleporting around everywhere, as you can see, and then channeling up some Winter Orb. That does some pretty good damage. Herald of Ice is shitting on everything, but on top of that, when our Creeping Frost actually kicks in, it was doing huge damage. What ended up happening with this character is it was pretty squish. I had to kind of go heavily out of my way just to scale damage and cast speed and make sure I was ticking those right boxes, and you couldn't really get much defense in the end out of it. So it was kind of a glass cannon. It was a pretty big cannon, so I was killing things like, you know, Ubers and stuff and blowing them up before they killed me. But then if you get touched, it was like GG. So even by my standards, I think this is kind of a glass cannon. For mapping, it wasn't a big deal because you're just destroying screens and you are freezing everything. But for the end game, you know, Uber bosses and shit, you couldn't really afford to get hit, and that was a bit of an issue, I'd say. And then at the same time, it was kind of high on the budget because I went... did I have some Ubers or something? Because in the end, I did, you know, spend a good bit of money to try and make this work. So as you can see, going in against a freaking ghosted Phoenix or some shit, charging up, and insta-dice. So we had a lot of damage in it, and it is what, an Uber Maven here. Uber Maven, get a few bits of damage in, boom. Had to be something like 30-40 million DPS, but like I said, at the end of the day, kind of expensive, and then kind of a glass cannon, so I don't know where that left the build in the end. Effectiveness, given that it's a glass cannon, I think we have to give it more like an 8, but it cleared well, it did single target well, so it performed in that respect. It was pretty damn fun. An 8, didn't love being glass cannon this time around, but you know, it was a lot of fun to put together and then ultimately pilot. I think I still got it to like level 95. Budget, not really very budget, but you can do this type of thing on budgets. Still, to be fair, I think I have to give it something like a 2. And then it does not get a huge score in that. I think it can be a starter. I wouldn't recommend it, but something like this can be a starter. And then I think, yeah, that ends up getting an 18, which is fair because it's not something I would have really wanted other people to copy. It's more of a proof of concept and just showing you what can be done with various skills in the game at the moment. Now we start getting to the big boys. This here was, by the time I did it and killed all content with it, I was calling it the best build I'd ever played. And that is tough for me to say because I play a lot of builds, and there's usually a build of the league that's kind of an outlier, and it's usually kind of hard to tell by comparison year to year, league to league, what's like the best build and stuff. But this one I'm pretty sure was undeniably the best build I'd ever played because it had huge damage, potentially some of the largest damage I'd ever done, at the same time as also being pretty damn thick. And that's kind of a rarity, that I can have something that deals damage so consistently, so highly, while also being a reliable, thick enough character in its own right. So it's not enough that something can just deal some of the most damage. This one also did it fully consistently because it had basically 100% crit chance, didn't rely on charges or flasks, any different type of uptime, any Val stuff. It's basically just what you see is what you get. You will have pretty much 100% of your damage, uptime, effectiveness, and then you'll also have the thickness to go behind the character to be able to take those hits. And I think I forgot to actually say what the character is. It's Energy Blade, Spectral Throw into Blazing Salvo. So you are stacking a bunch of Energy Shield, cutting that Energy Shield in half to give yourself a weapon that does a bunch of lightning damage, and then you use Spellblade and Battle Mage combined to give all of that lightning damage towards your spell, in this case being Blazing Salvo. Blazing Salvo is very powerful when it's casted on crit, stacks very well with Sniper's Mark. I'm using Spectral Throw as a good trigger for the first time in one of these sorts of things, which can make me kind of ranged, it can make me melee, it doesn't really matter. And then we're using Ivory Tower, the 3 flask setup with coruscating, the trader keystone so that you're like maximizing your flasks at all times. And I think I had some ES gain on hit from a Watcher's Eye and some leech and stuff, because as you can see, throughout all these Ubers, I was basically just farming them and face tanking this shit and giving no fucks. And as you can see, 19k ES, when you really need to, you can turn your energy blade off and then just have a huge buffer of extra energy shield or life EHP as you'd call it, just proving that we could even tank a Shaper Slam, which you shouldn't be able to do with this type of a setup. But absolute beast of a build. I think it also cleared Simulacrum pretty well, and yeah, just was something I was using to farm oil Ubers on. So Energy Blade is a pretty established setup like this with Ivory Tower and Wrathpith, but once you factor in that Spellblade is a new thing this league, it basically took these Energy Blade builds to a whole nother level and increased their output by I think about double, which is pretty crazy because they were already really good. So by this point, I was like, yep, this has to be the strongest build I've ever played. And then things still got crazier from there. But to give this one some ratings, and effectiveness, it was a 10. It was just freaking good in everything it ever tried to do. An enjoyment, you'd have to give it a 10. We had a lot of fun with it. The budget, I mean, it takes some very specific things to be very good and go all the way. But is this the one? Let me just double check. Yeah, I think this is the one. It does take some very specific things, but they're not super hard to get. So like an Ivory Tower, not hard to get. Crown of Inward, not hard. Wrathpith, not hard. Shaper's Touch, not hard. But to get like all the good rolls and all the best stuff, and then to fine-tune your own amulet, it does take a little bit of work. But work that's worth doing and work that you can do yourself. It's obviously not pure budget, but it's not hard to put something like this together when you put a bit of effort into it, and the results are absolutely ridiculous. So I still have to give it something like a pretty, given that it needs to have a high score, I think I have to give it something like an 8. So it ends up being a 28. Can it be a starter? I think you can start from a Ghost Wrath perspective into an Ivory Tower late game perspective, but Energy Blade's pretty startable early on. You'll have a surplus of damage regardless of what you're doing. It's just going to be about the growing pains of like fixing your ES and your Chaos Res until that point and all kinds of stuff. But Energy Blade I absolutely love, and then with this pretty tried and true setup, it takes it to a whole nother level. Do recommend trying this sort of stuff out at some point of your life. The next build was once again delving back into the meme mines to see what we could dig up, and it was Echoforge Charge Dash Occultist. Now Echoforge is a weapon I have played with once or twice in the past, and it's been some pretty lackluster uses, but I think it could have gone bigger this league, and I also wanted to incorporate a skill I haven't touched in quite a while that I did have a bit of a fond spot for in the past, and that is Charged Dash. What ended up resulting was a pretty large main build that actually was very effective on clear. I think it was one of the best clear builds I did for the league, so clear skill. While at the same time still managing some pretty damn good single target. I think I ended up having about 20 million DPS for a charge dash build. That's actually not too bad. So overall, it was pretty meme. It was fairly fun to play. But it was also very good for clear, decent for single target. Its main problem was it was kind of squish. Once again, to do something like this, you kind of feel like you have to pull out all the stops of DPS and you have to sacrifice some level of survivability. It had something like 4k HP, which isn't nothing, but at the same time it had Fortify. It would one-shot things very often, I suppose, and then also you had a very fast character, so we'd rarely actually get hit or die. It hit like level 94 or 95, it took on plenty of uber bosses, but it was certainly something a lot of people would not enjoy playing, and as such, it was more of a proof of concept character for Echoforge and for Charge Dash, as opposed to being a template for anyone to follow. I think my end conclusions were that Echoforge, definitely potential, but it's going to be hard to justify in most cases. but it's more about charge dash being something that can be really good and is a bit overlooked at the moment because it has some very big clear. It has a pretty good playstyle once you get used to it, but it's one that does need some work put into it before you actually get anywhere and start enjoying it. But as you can see, it becomes very fast, and then you just basically never get hit while killing things and zapping around everywhere. So maybe another one to look forward to in the future, a bit more charge dash action. To give that one some rating, effectiveness, pretty high up there, but given that it is tough to actually do some end game with this thing, you're going to be channeling, taking damage, zapping around. It's kind of weird. It has to be something like a 7, but it's one of the fastest clear builds I did for the league, so keep that in mind. The enjoyment is pretty damn high for this one. I had a lot of fun doing it. Echoforge itself is a lot of fun to build around. The occultist attack-based thing, pretty damn fun too. The budget, it's, yeah, very expensive. It's kind of put together. I think we'd have to call it like a 1, because, I mean, you're not even getting an Echoforge till probably week 3 or some shit. So yeah, definitely pretty shit scores for that. Can it be a starter? It can not. Overall, yep, a 17. I then went once again pretty heavy into the memes with a Prismatic Burst build using Charge Dash and Surging Thoughts Sword. So it's a very weird concept, it's a very weird execution. Basically, I had tried Prismatic Burst in the past and concluded that they have not given us enough to work with to make it a proper skill. But you can kind of cheese by getting a Forbidden Shaco that goes up to level 35 Prismatic Burst, and then all of a sudden you might have some actual like damage to scale around, and that's what I did. I let myself get a Forbidden Shaco just this one time at level 35, and then scale it with Shield Charge, which every single time you Shield Charge, you will be proccing your huge AoE. And then I also used a Surging Thoughts Sword for the first time ever to do like this storm cascade thing that does fuck all damage if we're real. It doesn't do much, it doesn't help much in the build, but it does a bit of extra clear, and we may as well use it because there's not much else I could do in this setup. But what we're doing is shield charging around and exploding with Prismatic Burst. It did some pretty substantial damage, and in the end it could clear plenty of things. The end conclusion was though that it's probably better to do this type of build as more Ignite base and then scale like Elementalist, all Ellie's Ignite and stuff, instead of like this crit hit base, which feels like it still needs more damage to properly justify the kind of setup we're doing. Whereas the Ignite base would clear better and then probably give you a bit more reliable single target. It was definitely a weird one, and it was, yeah, a bit of a cluster to showcase as a video, but that's what it was based around, and it was a lot of fun, but it still needed a bit more to be effective, and I'm not sure what they're doing with Prismatic Burst, honestly. It just needs better functionality or better numbers or something. Either way, this one wasn't really copyable, but you can take this and take it to a more Ignite concept, and with Shield Charge it'll be pretty damn snappy. It'll be very fast, very fun, and something to look forward to in future leagues if you have some disposable income or can get a Prismatic Burst Shaco. It's worth playing around with, but it's hard to do, and yeah, pretty rough going. Effectiveness, I'd say give it like a 6. It cleared pretty decent. It didn't single target the best, but I could get by with the budget that I had. Enjoyment, it was pretty damn high up on the enjoyment, putting it together and testing it and shield charging around, killing things. It was quite fun to engage in. The budget, it is very expensive to get going. Give it something like a 1 once again. So that is something like a 16. Can it be a starter? I'm pretty sure it can't. And then next up, we have what I think I am calling and was calling my build of the ever. So once again, it's a bit of a shame. I just then had a build that I thought was the strongest build I ever played, only to be usurped by a build a couple weeks later. And I'm pretty sure it was by that point the strongest build I ever played. It's still up to the conclusions of the individual, I'd say, because it's a bit more, it's a bit more about their strengths. They both didn't have many weaknesses, but this one had more strengths in more categories, I'd say. So the other build, the Energy Blade one, it was a bit better on single target, so it could like blow bosses up a bit better. But this one was a defensive powerhouse. So this is a int stacking, dagger base, wild strike trickster. Yeah. And it's similar in concept to what you could do as int stack with just energy blade, but I wanted to go a bit more hipster and do a dagger base instead of a claw base int stack as well. And basically the result is that you are stacking int, getting lightning damage, stacking int for your defenses as well, so getting lots of energy shield, getting lots of evasion because of some of the masteries that int can give you. And then I was using wild strike with Nimis, I think, to deliver those frost projectiles both ways. So in the previous patch, or in the previous league, when you used the freezing pulse version of wild strike, it could not double hit even with return proj. This time around, for some reason, after they made some changes, it could. And that means that our wild strike was doing twice as much output, but I also had the lightning version of wild strike incorporated too. So I had both the arc chains and the proj of the freezing pulse of the wild strike doing the extra damage, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to use the wild strike. It was a lot of fun to just be this tanky, because we had ghost shrouds, we had overleech, we had instant leech, we had like evasion cap, we had fortify, we had 10k ES. It was fucking crazy. Like, I'm pretty sure I've never had a stronger build, and I was straight up AFKing these simulacrums. And by AFKing, I mean, you know, standing there face tanking. Of course, I was still playing it at the keyboard. But you can see, like, these later waves, you're hitting lots of enemies, you're doing lots of damage, and then you have huge amounts of defense that you can kind of just sit there and it doesn't matter what you're doing. The gameplay was very face roll, and I think it was the strongest thing I'd ever done to that point. And I think there's even stronger potential with Energy Blade Tricksters, with the right gear setup and int stacking as well. So you can see it's absolutely ridiculous. You can see that the gameplay barely mattered. And then I took on all the Ubers. I was limit testing all of them to see what kind of damage I can get away with from tanking. And on top of all that, it was Wild Strike. Like, it's just so nice that Wild Strike was one of the best builds I'd ever played, and maybe even the best build I ever played, that it got plenty of extra bonus points for that. Because everyone's like, oh, Wild Strike's not that good. Math will make some Wild Strike and, you know, make it good. There it is. Super fucking good. Effectiveness, 10. Enjoyment, 10. Budget. If it's an energy blade, once again, you could take it to a lower budget. This one, it was not particularly budget. I did make it more expensive through the use of Animes, through the fact that I was doing... is this the one? The fact that I was doing a really meme dagger. If you're more like an energy blade, or if you're using, like, let's say, a Hand of Wisdom in action, if you're not using Animes, you're instead using all kinds of other skills, you can go Spectral Throw, you can go Molten Strike, you can go Frostblades, you can do whatever the fuck you want and still have a very strong character here. It can be more budget. This isn't very budget, but I'd say it can be. Unfortunately, it's going to have some kind of dumb low score, I'd say. And you can definitely start this type of Trickster, and I might still give it a shot as a bit of a test for some starter build action. But yeah, one of the best sort of templates. I do recommend doing an int stack Trickster at some point in life, just because the defensive setup through the masteries and just the synergy that you get from stacking int is pretty freaking crazy in this type of a setup, and it just comes together to have a very powerful synergistic build. I then was looking forward to playing a bit of Forbidden Rite at some point, and in a poison format, and I decided to make a poison Pathfinder Forbidden Rite, one that had a dual setup for weapon swapping, so that you could cycle and cast full channel, and so you could actually just manually run around and do good single target damage. The result was something that had, I don't know, 20-30 million poison DPS, something like that, and a pretty tanky character, and one that had crazy good recovery because of all the cast when damage takens with life gain on hit that I had built into it. And it was a nice playstyle. It was a good example of Forbidden Rite once again. It didn't feel super different to last time I did Poison Forbidden Rite, but, you know, there's only so much you can do with it, I think. So you stack your Chaos Res, you get some sort of timeless dual technology, you get a lot of cast speed, you stack a lot of poison, and it was, I think, the first Pathfinder I'd played in a long time as well. So it ended up being a very good, satisfying character. It took on, I think, all the Ubers. It's got good speed, evasiveness, single target. It's got good clear. It's got pretty much everything. It's just kind of hard to build because it is Forbidden Rite, and it takes a while to get that thing going. You need all the right cast resist, all the right pieces of gear, the right levels. So it's tough to put together. But Forbidden Rite is still a crazy good skill, and this wasn't anything too special of an example of the build, I don't think, of the skill and in the build format, but it was fun, it was good, and I could recommend doing something like this, or just taking any sort of Forbidden Rite and building similar enough to it and still getting really good results. Yeah, not much else to say. I mean, this is a Cortex, lots of extra life. You can see it's still doing really good poison damage. In the end, very strong build, and pretty fun to do. But it was nothing I wasn't expecting. I kind of knew what I was getting in myself into when starting this and trying it, and it pretty much delivered exactly that. So it's not too much of a surprising build, it's not too much of a surprise package, not too much to learn while doing it. Its effectiveness, it's pretty much a 10. Like, it killed everything, it cleared everything, it does good single target, good AoE. The enjoyment, it's something like an 8. You know, like I said, what I saw is what I got. I pretty much knew what I was going to get, and there it is. And the budget, I think you can do these on the cheaper end. Let me double check. Let me go to Forbidden Rite Poison. I did it with a Kana Cooler Mark. You know, when I first looked at these, they were barely like 100C or something, and the Tulas and a whole bunch of weird shit. I think you can do these on cheaper, but you probably wouldn't until you realistically are pretty established to do a Forbidden Rite. So it's something like a 3, I'd say, and a 21. Can it be a starter? I would highly not recommend starting with Forbidden Rite. It is painful to get going early on because you take a lot of damage until you have the right cast resist, the right recovery, the right passives. So something like that. Beyond that, we'll do a quick couple of video reviews because it's basically just during the events. We had Ice Spear Deadeye. We hit 95, and it was just during the meme 1 week events. So Ice Spear Deadeye, we've played it before. You know it, you love it, you've seen me do it, and it's very strong. It's a good starter. It was during not the HC event, so this is just softcore. Shifting Stones, I think it is. Blast from the Past. Started out with absolutely nothing, just playing Ice Spear, deadeyeing, using Sniper's Mark, freezing everything, doing good damage, very fast playstyle, and pretty satisfying. If you've seen it before, and it can still be a starter this time around, absolutely. If you want to do some Ice Spear Deadeye, you can pretty much follow this exact template and have some good success, or you can follow some other templates. But it does start out well, and it does have end-game potential. I think I ended up killing a few bosses. Nothing too crazy, maybe just a regular Maven or an Uber Maven. I think this is an Uber Maven, actually. Yeah, this is an Uber Maven. On the budget event with, you know, all that stuff. It's pretty solid. So effectiveness, it's, let's say something like an 8. It could use a bit more single target. It could use a bit better clear, but overall it's still pretty nice. Enjoyment, as always, something like a 9. It's very budget. Got to give it something like an 8. Can it be a starter? You know it. You basically just want to get into a snake pit as soon as you can, which is maybe going to take a bit, but once you're there, it's pretty good. And then our total for that, by my calculations, is a 25. And then after that, I also did Cumstorm during the other event. And Cumstorm, if you're unfamiliar, is cast while channel Cyclone into Exsanguinate with this sort of MTX. Just spray and cum everywhere, you know. Once again, very good starter. I played it all the way through the event right from level 1, and Exsanguinate goes pretty nicely early on. Once you get to around cast while channel tier, level 38, it really starts to do well. And then it doesn't really feel like it slows down until around red maps. It does feel like it slows down around the red map tier, so be careful of that. If you really want to go all the way and just feel great about a build, then this one's going to start to slow down by the time you get into the higher tiers. But before that point, it's very thick. Like, you'll have 5k life by level 70 almost. It's pretty reliable. You're just running around, right-clicking, spinning, and doing good damage over time damage, and it doesn't really take almost anything to get going. It's very budget as well. So there's not too much to say about that one. Give it a few quick ratings just for whatever. Effectiveness, great starter. Doesn't really do too much in endgame though. Something like a 6. Enjoyment, depends, up to you. I've played it a few times now and it's still pretty fun. Something like a 7. Budget, very budget. Can be done almost off nothing, but you do want to get like a few key items at some point. And it's a Scion as well, which gives it bonus points, I'd say. Can it be a starter? Yes. Total of... I am struggling because it's late. 22 once again, I think. Good old faithful 22. You know it. And then lastly, the very last build I just then played and just then posted a video of, we have Animate Weapon Guardian. But this is preamble to the ranged version that's going to happen next league. It's the first time I've played Animate Weapons, the first time I've done a Summoner Guardian, it's the first time I've done a Summoner in a good long while, and it was very powerful. It was basically carried by Guardian and his auras. It was carried by also Animate Weapon just being mechanically very strong. Basically, you summon a bunch of weapons off of your Blade Falls. Blade Falls leave some daggers on the ground, you summon some shit. We scale through Guardian and his auras. You have up to like 20 blades in this setup, and then they just shit on everything. It's a very strong build for general mapping, for general clear, for everything up until Uber bosses. And then for Ubering, it's honestly kind of shit. It's got good damage, it can have okay survivability, but at the end of the day, it's just a summoner. And most summoners seem pretty shit for Ubers because your minions can die. Like, you can summon up all 20 of your Animate weapons and then Maven can like one-shot them all with one ball, and that is pretty annoying and pretty stupid. But still very effective, and I did end up killing most of the Ubers, but it's hard to do, it's kind of painful, and I would not recommend taking it to the Uber level if you're ever going to. But next league will have ranged Animate Weapon. I feel like that may have more of a chance against Ubers on the higher end budget, but just in general, I think Animate Weapon next league is going to be insane with the ranged. I think it's going to be some of the best clear a summoner has ever had. So effectiveness, it's maybe a 9. The enjoyment, I'd say it's something like a 6. I don't really enjoy the summoner playstyle too much, and then resummoning the weapons a lot is a bit dumb, but still a lot of fun putting it together, and then piloting it wasn't too bad. It can be pretty damn budget. I'd say it can be a starter as well, but you're probably being SRS and then eventually turning into this. So it's not a bad score for this one, which would be a 23, I think, if, you know, I know what I'm doing. I might. Let me double check. It's, I don't know, who cares, something like 23. Doesn't matter. And with that, there it is. That's the end of the league review for all the builds. I think we did some pretty crazy builds this league, and also 2 of, I'd say, the best builds I've ever done have come from this league, and it has given me the confidence to maybe do more of that type of build for the future. So people always ask, you know, how do you make builds, Mathil, and where do you start? And this is part of the answer. Like, I just then did a int stack Trickster, and I just then did an energy blade with the Ivory Tower Inquisitor. After doing those, I have learnt from that type of a template and that type of success of its strengths and weaknesses to then take that to other templates and build upon that. So I know that int stack Trickster is something I'm going to do in the future and make some pretty powerful stuff off of. Likewise, with some energy blade cast on crit, if I want a real strong template, I'll go to that one. So it's all about trial and error. It's all about learning from your mistakes, from your successes, and then applying them to future projects. Had a lot of great builds, had a lot of fun in Trial of the Ancestors. I have no doubt this next league is going to be an absolute blast, and I hope you guys enjoyed this rating and the previous league, and I hope you guys are looking forward to the next league. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.